Yeah, hello, everybody. Today we're going to be talking about World War II, kind of going from our transition from the home front and talking about more of a focus on Japan. Before we do that, little joke that I have, I figured I'd start these off a little bit light. Um, but what do you call a pig that does karate? A pork chop. All right. Anyway, here we go. Back to business. All right. Anyway. Um, all right. So here is starting to slide again. All you got to do today is write down notes. I'll check this on Thursday as you come as you're walking in to make sure that you did this. Let me find out where I got to put the tools. Present. All right. So here's like some map of kind of what we've been seeing so far and talking about. Here's Hawaii where my cursor's at. As you can see, that's where Pearl Harbor was located at. But as you see, after Pearl Harbor, this is what the war would look like by 1942, about a year after Pearl Harbor. This little orange line that you see here, this circle, that would all be now Japanese territory. That once belonged to the United States. Essentially, after Pearl Harbor, our mission is going to be revenge and to start to retake some of these territories again that we're going to need. So think about how we're going to fight this war is going to be very, very different from how we fight it in Europe, where Europe is just one big landmass. You land in Europe, for the most part, at that point, once you land, it's all land-based. But notice, you have Guam, a little island right here. You have Iwo Jima. You got Okinawa. You got the Philippines. You got Marshall Islands. You got Midway. Those are just small little islands that you're gonna have to, go there, land, fight, and go on the next one. So obviously, much, much, much different. In terms of fighting this war and how the strategy is going to take place. All right. So after Pearl Harbor, as we mentioned before during our Pearl Harbor couple days, that Japan is not only going to attack Pearl Harbor, but they're going to attack Midway, Wake Island, Guam, and the Philippines. It's all going to be within that day. So Pearl Harbor, boom, they hit these other lands as well. It's all coordinated attack. It's all planned attack in terms of what they're going to try and cripple the U.S. forces that are located on these in these areas. Going back to what I said before about how this war is a little bit different. Again, both theaters of war, Europe and Pacific, were both brutal. But I would say, in terms of fighting in the Pacific was extremely wearing because, as I mentioned before, you have to go from island to island to island in order to fight. And as we got closer, to kind of going back to this last map here, as we got closer to Japan, like Iwo Jima, Okinawa, the fighting is going to get much more barbaric. The Japanese get much more desperate because you're getting close to the homeland here. Not saying that Midway and some of these other islands on the outside here aren't going to be defended. They are. There's going to be thousands of Japanese soldiers there to defend. But as you get closer, that's when those defense systems of the Japanese become much more increased, and the desperation of the soldiers to protect their homelands would be much more in desperation mode, to where you see an increase in kamikazes. Which, for those that don't know what kamikazes are, those are essentially like suicide missions. They take airplanes, they dive bomb them right into our ships. They're willing to sacrifice their lives in order to do that. You have something called bonsai charges, where you basically have Japanese soldiers that are outnumbered. They try to find smaller U.S. units, try to attack them, even though they're outnumbered. Try to kill as many as you can, and essentially that's what you gotta understand too, that the Japanese, they did not even think of surrendering. That wasn't a part of their vocabulary. They have something called this code called Bushido, where basically means that fight with honor, fight with pride, never surrender. So that's why many of the soldiers were willing to do these kamikaze bonsai charges that were essentially suicide missions. They weren't going to be taken prisoner. They would rather die to protect their country than be taken a prisoner. So as you see by the pictures here, in terms of just kind of understanding, a lot of these islands that were in the Pacific were jungle-like, like you're fighting in the jungle. So think about when you're fighting in a jungle in a wooded area, that leaves the enemy, or in this case, the Japanese, has a lot of hiding spots to fight against you. So we oftentimes didn't know where our enemies were located at. Now, this picture in the middle also shows tunnel systems. The Japanese built elaborate tunnel systems all throughout the islands in the Pacific. So not only in terms of just the jungle acting as a natural hiding spot for our enemy, but you also have the tunnel systems as well. They're popping up underground, they're hitting us, and they're going back underground. Then obviously you have the naval campaigns of Pearl Harbor's, or I'm sorry, of the Pacific as well, where the Navy is going to play a major factor there as well. A lot of naval campaigns. All right, so the fall of the Philippines. Think back to what we talked about during the imperialism unit, Spanish-American War. We go in and we overtake the Philippines. We imperialize them. It's one of the crown jewels of the Pacific for us. It's a pretty good-sized island, just south of China, south of Japan. Well, after Pearl Harbor, you see in December 41, we lose the Philippines. So at this point, as I said, going back to that first map I showed you guys, Japan now controls all the Pacific. This is when the Japanese are at their strength. They're very strong at this point, gaining confidence and reclaiming and defeating Americans off these islands. But the general that was in charge of the Pacific was General Douglas MacArthur. He was stationed at the Philippines. You see by the photo here, he was arguably one of the greatest generals that we've had, especially in World War II. When the Japanese surprise attacked us, he took it as a personal insult that essentially he has to basically leave the place that he was defending, and as he's leaving the island, he vows, "I shall return." Not quite in that theatrics, but which he does, as we'll talk about later on in the next couple of weeks, that he will end up coming back to the Philippines and reclaiming it. But for now, we are defeated. We have to leave the Philippines. Japanese forces are there and are going to overtake it. All right, so what strategy? Kind of going back to what I said before, I even kind of alluded to this, but the strategy that we're going to use to fight in the Pacific is called island hopping. As you can see by the map down here, kind of turn to Pearl Harbor, go from island to island to island to island, just kind of hop around until we get closer to Japan, until eventually we have to invade Japan. But how it's going to work is this: the Navy is going to usually they're going to be bombing the islands first. Could be a day, 2 days, a week, 2 weeks of just bombing, and then the Marines are going to invade. So it's a two-pronged attack: Navy first, then the Marines invade. So I'll show you guys some things I'll show you guys some things with this as we move further in the unit. All right. So today we're watching a video today, Thursday, that is going to be showcasing this. It's called Doolittles Raid. This is the revenge attack that we're going to have on Japan. So after Japan hits Pearl Harbor, Midway, we need to think of something, even small, whatever, but we need to show Japan that they did not cripple us. So FDR begins to plan this Doolittles Raid, which was not very popular amongst the generals and some of his inner circle. They thought that we needed to kind of regroup, figure out a more elaborate strategy. FDR did not want to wait. He wanted to attack Japan on Japan's soil, like in the heart of Japan. So Lieutenant Doolittle will be the commander of this attack, hence why it's called Doolittle, and they're going to attack Tokyo. They're going to send a small group of planes in there, and they're targeting the oil refineries and factories in Tokyo to try and hurt the Japanese war power as well. The result, a lot of things what they target for is going to be missed. So in that regard, they didn't hit a ton of the targets or all their targets. They did hit some. We did have some planes that were shot down. Some will land in China, as I'll show you guys here in the video. But essentially, as you'll see, this was a very risky mission. You're sending in a small group of planes into the heart of Tokyo that's going to be defended. And a lot of the men came to grips with this. This is going to be a very tough go, and the odds of them making it alive is going to be very, very slim. I don't want to ruin anything. I'll show it to you guys in the video. But ultimately, the reason why this is important is, for one, again, although you missed some of the targets, you didn't hit all of them, but it did boost American morale. To show Americans that, hey, Japan hit us, but they didn't cripple us. And really showed Japan, too, that same thing, that they hit us at Pearl Harbor, but we're here and we're ready to go. This happened really, again, shortly right after Pearl Harbor happened. And then B, it made Japan realize that we were capable of attacking mainland Japan. They didn't cripple our military. So anyway, this is what you need. These slides Obviously, what I have highlighted and underlined with things that more important. But again, really all this stuff in terms of this slide alone with Doolittles Raid, know that. Just don't copy down the bold because that wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. Copy down like the one, copy down the targets, copy down the result, and this event. So basically, this whole slide you should be copying down your notes. All right. So all right. Well, thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see you Thursday.